Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahabushai, Bahasham, Rakahak Wadash, Barakatum. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, glory, and infinite honors to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahabushai. Double honors to the apostles and elders, a great millstone who ruled and teach well. And peace and salutations to you sincere Akim out there, pushing this word in truth and sincerity to the four corners of the globe. May you brothers endure to the end. This is the brother Raiya coming at you with another lesson. And I'm going to start it off with an article from the economiccollapseblog.com titled, Trump nominees are targets of BOMB threats as radical groups plan massive protests for Inauguration Day. You didn't think that the radicals would just give up and go home after Donald Trump won the C-elections, keyword there, did you? It took a little bit of time for the shock of Trump's selection victory to wear off, but now it appears that they are ready to cause widespread chaos. On Wednesday, it was being reported that multiple individuals that have been nominated for positions in Trump's cabinet have been targeted with violent threats. Multiple of President-elect Donald Trump's cabinet nominees were targeted with violent threats in recent hours, and law enforcement officials are responding, Trump's transition team said on Wednesday. The threats occurred on Tuesday night and Wednesday morning, and included BOMB threats and swatting, Trump transition spokesperson Caroline Leavitt said in a statement. Swatting refers to attacks where people falsely report crimes to police, sending them to locations where no emergency occurred. Law enforcement and other authorities acted quickly to ensure the safety of those who were targeted, Leavitt said. President Trump and the entire transition team are grateful for their swift action. And hey, like I said, the key word was the presidential C-elections. It's already determined who was going to be the president of the United States of America, because these, politicians and other higher-up people in society, they're on board with the agenda of the elites, the GREATRESET. That NW0. So we're coming into the times where a lot of these events that are about to take place, they're going to have to be scrutinized heavily because, they could be naturally occurring or they could be FALSE, to further implement an agenda such as stamping out rights, free speech, putting information on the internet, protesting, you name it. But regardless of what the origin of it is, we know through biblical prophecy that there will be political violence out here and civil unrest. People in America turning against their government officials and coming against them violently. This is 2 Esdras chapter 15 in the Apocrypha. I'm going to start at verse 16. For there shall be sedition among men. And the definition for sedition is conduct or speech inciting open rebellion against a ruling authority or monarch. And we're already seeing, a lot of seditious talk out here with, people just in an uproar over Trump's selection. And even as we're going into this article, what are they saying? There's already talks of BOMB threats against Trump nominees and swatting events taking place. Well, it's eventually going to get to the point to where physical violence is going to happen, as it says, and invading one another. They shall not regard their kings nor princes. And your modern day kings and princes are these people in the government, the mayors, the senators, the governor, the presidents, as well as the authorities like the police or the military that uphold the system. And the course of their actions shall stand in their power. And, people getting in an uproar over politics is one thing, but add in the coming economic collapse, food shortages and supply chain disruptions, We're on the cusp of World War III, this cost of living crisis with people living paycheck to paycheck and facing, being thrown out on the streets. You've got all these other confluencing factors coming together, which would be the perfect, fuel to spark off just complete civil unrest and anarchy in the United States of America. And you got to think, the main targets, would be these politicians, because, you got a lot of these people out here that don't understand that, this political system and these politicians don't give a shit about you. So they really invested themselves in these people that they vote for, thinking that they're going to make their lives better. But when they really find out that the rug has been pulled out from under their feet, who's going to be the face that they can easily put, their frustrations on? The politicians, because they don't see the true hidden hand out here, like the Rothschilds or the Rockefellers. This isn't just happening to nominees that are highly controversial. For example, Elise Stefanik and Lee Zeldin were not controversial picks by Trump, but they have been targets of BOMB threats. Elise Stefanik, a Republican U.S. representative and Trump's choice to be U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, and Lee Zeldin, a former Republican congressman who is Trump's pick to head the Environmental Protection Agency, both said in separate statements they had been the targets of BOMB threats. An FBI spokesperson said the Bureau is aware of numerous BOMB threats and swatting incidents targeting incoming administration nominees and appointees, and is working with its law enforcement partners. Could you imagine living with the fear that some nut could set off a BOMB at your home at any moment? Zeldin says that the pipe BOMB threat that was directed at his family came with a pro-Palestinian themed message, which, right there should set off some red flags. As it says in 2 Corinthians 2 verse 11, lest Satan should get an advantage of us, for we are not ignorant of his devices. Hey, this devil is about to use any and all means to fulfill his agenda and, get people divided out here. And, with Trump appointees, and you got to remember, Trump is pro-Israel to the max. With Trump appointees getting Palestinian-themed BOMB threats against them, what could that cause? Oh, you see, we've got radicals out here that are going for the enemies of our ally Israel. So we got to what? Bring about more surveillance, stamp out more free speech, and what with these protests? Crack skulls out here. A pipe BOMB threat targeting me and my family at our home today was sent with a pro-Palestinian themed message, Zeldin said in a statement posted on X. My family and I were not home at the time and are safe. We are working with law enforcement to learn more as this situation develops. President Trump hasn't even taken office yet, and this is already beginning. So how bad will it get once Trump and his cabinet start making decisions that the radicals absolutely detest? Well, as we just read in 2 Esdras chapter 15, violence and sedition will take place. And lest we forget, leading up to the 2024 elections, you had a bunch of amendments and laws and talking points, being floated out there to deal with an event such as a mass casualty event involving those in the government. This is an article from AmericanMilitaryNews.com. Lawmakers propose amendment to address mass casualty event and rising political tension, sedition among men. A constitutional amendment has been proposed by members of the House of Representatives to address a potential mass casualty event and discourage potential attacks and deletion attempts against U.S. lawmakers. And as we just read in that first article, you've already got Trump nominees, facing BOMB and other violent threats to their persons. According to the Washington Post, 2 Republicans and 2 Democrats in the House of Representatives have proposed a constitutional amendment that would provide continued representation for American citizens in the event of a potential mass casualty incident by allowing House members to be quickly replaced. The lawmakers have argued that the amendment would discourage people from committing violent acts to change the House's balance of power. We've seen a 300% increase in threats against members over the last 7 years. There shall be sedition amongst men, which includes that conduct or speech inciting open rebellion against a ruling authority or monarch. According to the Capitol Police, Representative Derek Kilmer of Washington recently said, "In an environment where we have seen a growing tendency toward political violence, imagine, horrifically, a baseball practice where someone has bad intentions and better aim. You can literally flip a majority for 3 to 4 months, which I think is a frightening incentive for political violence." So what? We've got threats on Trump appointees before his inauguration, and say, when he finally gets into office, that there's a mass casualty event that takes place. That would create chaos. And what? They're already putting measures in place to quickly replace, those that were deleted. And hey, also back around September, you had that vote, which pretty much, transferred authority from the U.S. government over to, the United Nations, the WHO, and these other global agencies, to where if an event takes place in America that, it looks like it can't be handled by the authorities, then the UN can step in and take control of the situation. So with them talking about this amendment to quickly replace those taken out without a vote, who's to say they won't flood it in with those of the UN, the WHO, or these other global agendas to just make it that much easier to get this country under lockdown and just push about that NW0, taking away people's rights and, making you do whatever they want you to do, which is ultimately going to be receiving the MOTB in Revelation 13, verses 16 to 18, that C-hip implant. But let's get back to this article. We'll jump down to these last few paragraphs. Inauguration Day is coming up on January 20th, and many on the left plan to make it a day to remember. The following comes from the official website of one group that is engaged in a nationwide mobilization effort. On Inauguration Day, January 20th, people will come together in Washington, D.C., and in cities and towns across the country in a nationwide mobilization opposing Trump's ultra-right billionaire agenda. Trump ran a con game during the election. His real agenda is to destroy workers' rights, deport millions of immigrant families, and pave the way for a complete corporate capitalist takeover by ending regulations to protect the environment, firing thousands of public sector workers, and transferring ever larger parts of the national treasury to the military-industrial complex. He is 100% behind Netanyahu's deletion war against the Palestinian and Arab people. The Trump victory in 2024 election represents the complete failure of the Democratic Party to stop the rise of the ultra-right, which, again, it's all just political theater. In fact, they have contributed to it by adopting much of the program of the extreme right while embracing endless war. Instead of responding to the needs of the people Both the Democrats and Republicans have moved further and further to the right. Trump's agenda is the culmination of this rightward spiral, and his administration will move to make major gains for the billionaire class at the expense of the millions of everyday people in the U.S. and across the world. There will be lots of Trump supporters in Washington, D.C. on January 20th, but there will also be lots of radicals. In 2016, radicals smashed windows and set vehicles on fire to protest Trump's inauguration. I expect much worse this time around. Sadly, the violence on January 20th will only be a preview, and he's damn right on that, of the tremendous chaos that is eventually coming to the streets of America. There are literally hundreds of groups that are starting to organize a resistance to Trump, and they are not messing around. And we know, according to biblical prophecy, violence and civil unrest will take place on the streets of the United States of America. But now I'm going to play this clip real quick from the Guardian News, because remember, what Trump had to say about radical leftists. Donald Trump, the enemy within should be handled by the military. And this is a fair use copyright disclaimer. I do not own any of the footage in this clip, nor do I stand to gain from it monetarily. It is simply for educational purposes.
What are you expecting? Joe Biden said he doesn't think it's going to be a peaceful election day.
Well, he doesn't have any idea what's happening in all fairness. He spends most of his day sleeping. I think the bigger problem is the enemy from within, not even the people that have come in and destroying our country. By the way, totally destroying our country. The towns, the villages, they're being inundated. But I don't think they're the problem in terms of election day. I think the bigger problem are the people from within. We have some very bad people. We have some sick people, radical left lunatics. And I think they're and it should be very easily handled by, if necessary, by National Guard, or if really necessary, by the military, because they can't let that happen.
How are you going to guard
by the National Guard, or if necessary, the military? Back in 2 Esdras 15, verse 17, a man shall desire to go into a city and shall not be able. And what does that sound like? A state of martial law, where you're going to have the right identification to move about freely. And, inauguration violence could help in kicking this off. Another pestilence, which Bill Gates of Hell was talking about recently, which would bring about new lockdowns, could kick this off. Economic collapses and food shortages leading to civil unrest. A whole host of issues to get the military on the streets to what? Lock things down and get people in order. But now I'm going to go to a article on ACLU.org's website talking about Project 2025, which, was a Republican-backed document talking about what they would like to give Trump the ability to do in the event of his second election, which took place. And, before Trump disavowed it, but hey, now that he's been selected, he's been much more open to it. But this is under the section Unleashing Undue Force on Protesters, such as those protesting on the inauguration, or just his presidency in general. Violating the First Amendment by using federal law enforcement to target journalists and protesters. Hey, we may need to use the National Guard or the military if necessary. Yeah, I'm looking for the main point I want to get to. think I'll start right. Slovakia. I forgot the point I wanted to start at. All right, I'll just read this. What our experts say, Donald Trump has made no secret of his disregard for the rule of law and his intent to corrupt the immense powers of the federal government, to target his opponents and break the institutions that could pose checks and balances to presidential power. In a second term, unleashed and feeling invulnerable from legal and political repercussions, he would pose an unprecedented challenge to our constitutional values. Trying to find that main point I wanted to read. All right, here it is. I'll read this too. In 2020, the Trump administration threatened to use force to quell protests and actually did deploy federal agents and National Guard troops who arrested and used excessive force against protesters and journalists. If Trump secures a second term, which he has, this abuse of power is likely to recur and even escalate. Trump has already indicated that his administration would consider invoking the Insurrection Act to deploy the military to American cities. Hey, a man shall desire to go into a city and shall not be able, potentially targeting those with large BIPOC, which means Black, Indigenous people of color. Hey, you tribes, so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, the children of Israel, being the main target, which you've always been the main target to these elites, and immigrant communities. Hey, lest we forget, Trump has been saying, hey, we're going to get those deportations rolling once I'm in office. To suppress the right to protest, Trump has also indicated that his administration would attack online free expression by forcing media companies and online platforms to carry conservatives' preferred speech. As president, with federal law enforcement agencies under his control, Trump could carry out attacks on advocacy organizations and individuals he opposes. Indeed, on the campaign trail, Trump has praised violent crackdowns on campus protests, aligning with his previous attacks on academic freedom. In particular, he has threatened to deport student protesters who are not U.S. citizens, merging his attacks on free speech with his attacks on immigration. We also expect Trump to use his authority to further target media members and the freedom of the press to suppress negative stories about him or his administration. Furthermore, Project 2025 has made clear that a second Trump administration intends to dismantle the already insufficient guardrails that prevent the president from abusing the executive branch's power. The Supreme Court already removed one such guardrail in Trump versus United States, ruling that the president cannot be criminally prosecuted for official acts, including using the Justice Department for his personal and political bidding. Trump can use a politicized Justice Department and the vast array of federal agencies to attack voters, protesters, journalists, child deletion care providers, and patients, his political opponents, and others he perceives as enemies. Even now, Trump allies in Congress are trying to use their investigative tools to chill free speech, including targeting civil society organizations and activists engaged in protected advocacy, such as opposing the war in Gaza or supporting alphabet rights. So, hey, everything is perfectly lining up for that civil unrest in the United States of America and the hard, draconian responses to handle it. Now I'm going to go to Isaiah chapter 19. I'm going to start at verse 2. And I will set the Egyptians against the Egyptians. And this is speaking about those spiritual Egyptians as pursuant to Revelation 11 verse 8. The United States of America, especially these American Edomites. And they shall fight, everyone against his brother and everyone against his neighbor, city against city and kingdom against kingdom. And as we read in that article, there are already threats against Trump cabinet nominees, and there's mass protests being planned for January 20th, Inauguration Day. And we know Trump is on that authoritarian kick. And as he said, hey, for that enemy within, we may need to use the National Guard or even the military. Now I'm going to jump down to verse 4. And the Egyptians will I give over into the hand of a cruel lord. And Trump's looking like that man to fit that bill of being that cruel lord. And a fierce king shall rule over them, saith the Lord, Yahweh of hosts. But, yeah, that's, actually, I'll go back to 2 Esdras 15. Because like I've been saying throughout the video, no matter how it plays out, that violence will play out because it's all a part of biblical prophecy. And you're eventually going to see these Americans, former best friends, co-workers, family members, you name it, going at each other's throats. This is 2 Esdras 15 verse 14. Woe to the world and them that dwell therein, for the sword and their destruction draweth nigh, and one people shall stand up and fight against another, Egyptians against Egyptians, class warfare, political warfare, race warfare, gender warfare, you name it, and swords in their hands. And the modern day sword in America is that gun. And then it jumps back into verse 16. For there shall be sedition among men, conduct or speech inciting a rebellion against a ruling authority or monarch. So that's it with this video. And with this video, I hope you sincere Akim and Akwath were edified. Just keep strong. We are almost out of this final wicked captivity of the heathen nations, chiefly of the Edomites. And as always, I'm going to say Abad Babol, Kwam Yasharala, and until next time, Shalom. Shalom Akim, Wa Akwath. This is just a, an addendum to this video. A brother had posted this video in our chat, and I found it, relevant to the topic of this video. And it's from Full Spectrum Survival YouTube channel titled Emergency News, Get Out, Martial Law Warning from Trump, Worst Case Scenario. And I'm going to play the first minute or so. And it's a fair use copyright disclaimer. I do not own any of the footage in this clip, nor do I stand to gain from it monetarily. It's simply for educational purposes.
Politicians across the USA are right now being told to increase their personal security. Of course, this is being done at your tax-paying dollar, but there's an understanding that as Donald Trump comes into his position of presidency and deports, maybe using the U.S. military, possibly using martial laws, deports lots of people who have been here illegally, that the groups that have set up their concreted in structure, like MS-13, like Tren de Aragua, they will start going after the politicians and possibly the citizens of the USA.
And hey, that perfectly lines up with that article we read from militarynews.com with those Republican and Democratic, House members looking to pass an amendment to immediately replace, you know, House members that were deleted in a mass casualty event. And like we were going into earlier in the video, you have Trump nominees getting threatened with violence against themselves. And say an incident happened with these gangs or these migrants, which led to a mass, casualty event amongst the politicians. And also, it's not just Jorge and Pacquiao coming across the border for a better life. You've got people from, China, Iran, Russia, Africa, other Middle Eastern countries coming across the border as well. And a lot of them are sleeper cells and theists. They're just getting ready to, waiting for the call to get ready, to commit acts of violence in this country. This is Jeremiah chapter 51. I'm reading verses 12 to 14. Set up the standard upon the walls of Babylon, Babylon the Great, America. Make the watch strong, set up the watchmen, prepare the ambushes. Hey, these sleeper cells and other agents coming across the border. For Yahweh hath both devised and done that which he spake against the inhabitants of Babylon. And what did Full Spectrum Survival just say? Hey, politicians are being told to prepare for civil unrest in the wake of Donald Trump's deportation agenda, and also that regular old U.S. citizens may be targeted as well. O thou that dwellest upon many waters, or many peoples, Revelation 17, verse 15, abundant in treasures, the number one consumer nation on the face of the earth. Thine end is come, and the measure of thy covetousness. Yahweh of hosts hath sworn by himself, saying, surely I will fill thee with men, which we've been seeing with these migrants flooding across the southern border, as with caterpillars, and they shall lift up a shout against thee. So not only are you going to have civil unrest in this country from regular American citizens going at each other, but throwing these migrants into the mix, and it's going to be a violent free-for-all. And one people shall stand up and fight against another with swords in their hands.
Started combing through the different social media accounts that we follow, the open source intelligence accounts that we follow that specifically track these, along with some that have out in the open said that we have Navy SEAL teams here operating on U.S. soil, rogue, unofficially, tracking and taking out members of these gangs. They are all saying the same thing, that there's a lot of chatter right now of people in these groups being very mad at you, the average American citizen. Now, they're coming into this country thinking that, hey, we can do everything we want.
I'd say with that clip. But again, I hope this was an edifying lesson to you sincere Akim and Akwat out there. I'm going to say shalom.